Man to Men is for men like me. My name is Connor Blair, and I live in Auburn, Alabama, where I'm a sophomore at Auburn University pursuing a degree in film and visual media and a minor in public relations. I hope you enjoy this episode, and God bless.
This is Man to Men, the audio journal for Christian men who live faithfully and lead courageously. I'm Jared Musgrove with you for an in-depth conversation with yet another courageous leader, and today we have Jason Fabok. He is an Eisner Award-winning artist. Now, guys, the Eisner is the highest award you can receive in comics or illustration. You may know him from his work on Justice League and the blockbuster Batman 3 Jokers. Guys, that thing just keeps moving copies. But he's got an exciting new publishing initiative with Ghost Machine, and he's got a brand new sci-fi epic coming that I'm actually pretty excited. We're going to talk some about today. Look, Exodus, and that's going to launch just later this spring, probably about the time you're listening to this. Jason Fabok, welcome to Man to Men.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jared. I'm really excited about this.
No, I was sharing you a little bit with you a little bit before as we were pre-gaming. I have admired your work for a long time. The first time I remember really taking notice was during it was Justice League, the Amazovirus, that storyline. There's this spread that you did in there. I think it's at the opening, and it's Batman and Superman. And it's a 2-page spread, and the amount of detail you packed into there, there's this money flying around, and like you drew do you remember this?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, it did what comic art should do. It made me stop and just drink it in. It's fantastic storytelling. I would say I was aware of you. That was the moment I went, oh, this dude's got something going on. And then as I shared with you, I was listening to an interview, and you had shared about your faith in Christ and even just incorporating your faith into some of your work. So I'm excited to get to talk to you today, and then really looking forward to what you guys got coming with Ghost Machine. And we'll get into that a little bit as well. I want to start kind of at the beginning of your career, and we can zoom around there. Your first professional comics experience was Superman Batman number 17. I mean, dude, you started with the icons. Like you didn't start with Stargirl, no offense to Geoff. What got you there? What was it like kicking it all off with that book?
It's funny because you sent me some of these questions before, and so I was really thinking about some of them. And it's funny. Like I look back on that book, and I kind of like wince. That was my first foray, and then, like I look at it. I actually found some of the original pages the other day when I was digging and cleaning through my office here. I'm just looking at them, and I'm just like, I'm amazed at how far I've come artistically from then. But I remember that time was like I had just finished kind of apprenticing with David Finch, who comic fans will know him from Avengers and X-Men, and he did a whole bunch of Batman and Wonder Woman and all kinds of stuff at DC as well. But I was apprenticing with him, and he was able to get me a tryout at DC, and they gave me a job. It just threw me right in. And here I am, like, my portfolio, I probably spent a week per page to make it look really good. And then now it's like, no, you got to drop a page a day, and we need 5 pages this week and 5 pages next week. And that was a really trying time. But the one memory that comes to mind is my grandfather, who I was very close with him. And I remember I was working late because I was trying to get these deadlines done. It was my first job. I'm trying to impress DC. I want more work. This is my shot. And I'm like, this could be my one and only chance, right? To make it somewhere. And I remember my grandfather coming over one night, and it was really late. And he just came over, and he just said to me, I was just thinking about you, and I wanted to come over and encourage you. And he kind of had tears in his eyes because I think he was just proud. It's making me kind of choke up right now. But he passed away a few years ago, and I just that kind of gave me that little bit of energy to kind of spur me on to get me through that. And looking back on it now, it wasn't my best work, but I did the best with what I could at the time, and I handed the project in. I got it done, and that was enough. That was enough that just showed them that I was dependable. I could do it. I could do the job, and I was also willing to. I was constantly asking my editor about what I could do to make this page better or this layout better, or and I was willing to kind of learn and grow and just take criticism. And I was prepared for that because working with David Finch, I asked a lot of critique and stuff like that, and he was willing to give it truthfully. And sometimes the truth, it kind of, especially with artwork, it hurts you because artwork is so personal. But at the same time, you have to realize, and I realized right from the beginning that I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be a perfect artist. There's always something I can fix, and there's always something I can learn. And so I think I did that well, and that spurred on the next job and the next job and the next job. And now it's been 13 years, and I've had a very good career, and I'm very happy with it, and feel very blessed to have had the opportunities I've had. And it all started there. And I mean, it started further back from that. I went to school for animation, and I was drawing in high school. I was drawing a lot too. And there was always people in my life that were there that were very encouraging to me and helped me to grow artistically and point me in one direction or another direction. And so, and even to this very day, guys like Geoff Johns, he's like a brother to me. And again, it's like, he's been through it. He's a little older than me, so he's been through a lot of this stuff. So he can come beside me and give me, his 2 cents and guidance and wisdom that he's learned. So I think the kind of what I'm trying to say is like a good lesson is to be humble and to be willing to learn and grow and take critiques, especially if you want to get into the arts. You're going to get critiqued, and it's what you do with it. Are you going to take it and let it hurt you, or are you going to take it and go, okay, well, maybe I need to work on my expressions or proportions or whatever, and then move forward with that?
That's good advice, man. Something I've noticed about you too is you have a strong work ethic. It would seem your drawing is incredibly detailed. So I'm like, there's a lot of work that goes in there. What inspired some of that for you?
Well, again, going back to my grandfather, my father, my mother, I come from a family of farmers who, farmed and worked hard, worked long hours. I grew up a lot of times at my grandfather's farm and on my grandma's farm on my dad's side as well. And they were always doing something. They were always working. The only time I ever saw my grandpa sit down was on a Sunday after, like afternoon watching football or something like that. Like he was always out doing something, and there was always something to fix, and there was always something to build for the next day. And so I had good role models in that sense of people who worked hard when it was time to work, but then also when there was a time for family and a time for church, especially, and things like that. It was like, nope, we're going to go and do that now. And those are important things too. But the time that was set out to work, whether it's getting up early, and I try to schedule my day so that I'm done by supper time, but that means I got to get up really early. I get up fairly early in the morning and start working, and then I work out in the morning as well. And I have to plan for that in there. And then if there's other things during the day too, like this podcast, I had that scheduled in, so I have to make up that hour somewhere. But yeah, I don't know, those kinds of things, the discipline, the work ethic, I think it comes from a lot of that, watching really good role models that I had, and just also, like my brother, he works in 3D animation. He works for a video game company in Texas, and he's the same way. Great work ethic, works his tail off when he needs to work. And I think, again, we had really good role models, and it's like, just to me, I don't know how you teach a good work ethic except for just seeing it being done. But to me, it's the make or break, because like you can be an excellent artist But if your work ethic isn't good and you're missing deadlines, you're not going to get the jobs. You can be a medium, like a kind of an average artist, but if you're hitting those deadlines and you're working really hard and they know you're working hard, it's going to lead to more and more opportunities. And the more and more opportunities also, I feel, help you grow as an artist because you're getting more experience. So then you're getting better as well. And it's like that work ethic is something that is important in any job, really.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much application.
Yeah.
To any of the dudes listening here. Yeah, that's really good, man.
Yeah,
that's really good. You know, you're courageously open about your Christian faith in what is largely a very secular industry. That's something I've always admired about you since I found that out. And I do see some of that in your work. How did you come to faith in Christ, and how did you grow up in Him?
Yeah, grew up in a Christian home, Christian family. Went to church every Sunday. My dad taught Sunday school. My grandmother was a prayer warrior, praying all the time, and just had that really great Christian influence, seeing it lived out. I remember getting saved when I was around 5 or 6. That's when I made a decision after watching a Jesus movie that we rented from like the church library or something. And it's
you never
funny
know, do you?
Yeah. It's like it's interesting because like my 6-year-old daughter, she just made a decision for Christ just recently, and it's like you can ask them all you want, like, hey, do you want to make a decision? And it's like one day they just all of a sudden they're just like, you know what, I want to make a decision today. And that was like me. It was like my dad would say, like, like, do you understand this? Do you believe this? And I'd be like, yeah, but I want to make it. I'll make that decision when I want to make it. So it was interesting. It was after watching a movie, and then I felt really convicted, and I just wanted that relationship with Christ, and
the power of art.
Yeah. And then, continued that way, but life goes its own ways, and you have your own trials and things like that come up. And high school kind of moved to, I was getting into music and rock and roll and playing a lot of hockey and just a lot of distractions and partying and kind of, I don't know, chasing after other things. I don't feel like my faith was there, and I still believed everything I said, but I was being a hypocrite as to how I was living. Right. And, one of my favorite stories is the Pilgrim's Progress. And I've been, I've been reading through this kids version of the book to my kids. It's called Little Pilgrim's Big Journey.
Is it the one with the rabbits?
No, that's a different one. I actually just bought that one.
Okay. Yeah.
That's going to be an Easter present for the kids.
Okay.
They don't know that right now, but
we'll post this after Easter.
Yeah. But there's this great book series called Little Pilgrim's Big Journey, and they're just more color, like big bright colors, very simplified version of the story, but it has great little applications after each chapter. And so I've been going through that with my kids, and I really just see the truth of that from the Christian walk perspective, because there were so many times I'm walking down the path, and then you get distracted and you go off on this side or you go off over there, you fall into sin, you make a mess of your life, and then all of a sudden, you got, Jesus is kind of tapping you on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, like, the path's over here, buddy. Like, I told you not to wander, but you did. But I'm still here. I'm following you. Let's go back this way. I'm going to lead you back over here. And, that's kind of, my life has been like that. And I made another decision for Christ when I was 20 years old. I was going through college for animation at the time, and really not living my life for the Lord. And the classic Christian rock band Petra, they were my favorite band. And they were doing a farewell tour. This was like in 2012 or something like that. No, it would have been 2005. Yeah, 2005, something around there. And they were doing a farewell tour at the time. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get tickets. I'm going to go see him. So I'm there that night, and standing there on the floor, and the guitarist Bob Hartman is giving his testimony, and he's just talking about, living your life, just, ignoring the truth and what is the truth. And he made an analogy, something like, Jesus isn't a crutch. You're not going to be limping into heaven. He's going to carry you into heaven on a stretcher because you're dead. You're spiritually dead. And I remember standing there on that floor, and I was in a large crowd, but I felt like I was just there alone. And that night, I just gave my life to Christ again, and I felt this burden like just come off of my back. It felt literally like the guy from Pilgrim's Progress.
Yeah,
like it was like I could feel it. Like it's like my shoulder all of a sudden straightened up, and I just felt like the Holy Spirit was just right there with me and like kind of confirming this for me at the time. And things, it was still tough and rough, and I was still kind of living with one foot in the world and one foot out. But from that moment on, I gave my life over to Christ, and I started listening to what he had to say to me and where he was leading me. And I ended up, after animation college, I felt a leading to go to a Bible college.
Yeah.
And so I did a year at a very small Bible college up in Northern Ontario called Word of Life Bible Institute. It's just a 1-year Bible study. You're not really going there to be a pastor, right? Like you can use all those credits to move on, but I just wanted to study the Bible and learn. And they would get in like really great teachers from all over the US and Canada to come in and teach specific books. And so you were getting like a great education. And I met my wife there. I feel like I was able to kind of build a foundation for the rest of my life. And it was interesting too, because while I was there, I wasn't sure if the arts thing was where I needed to go. And so I kind of stopped drawing for a little bit. And then all of a sudden I just felt like this desire to I felt like God was saying to me, like, I want you to give up your art and just go off and do that. Like, give up on your dreams. I want you to go to this Bible college. Trust me, And then I get there and I'm like, okay, Lord, I gave up. I'm giving up on those dreams. I'm going to follow you. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to give you back your art because I can see that you were faithful in this, and you took this you followed me here. I'm going to give you back your art, but now let's do it for a different purpose. Like you built a good biblical foundation for your life. Now let's use that foundation in everything that you do, including your work. And I felt more and more drawn towards doing art, but it was always comic book stuff. Like that was where I really wanted to go and do. And then, one thing I mentioned, David Finch, I was there at the Bible Institute for 1 year, and then I interned there doing video work and graphic design stuff. And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun there. And my wife was from that area, so I kind of stayed there so that I could keep them, because she lived literally 5 minutes from the school. So we kind of were still building up our relationship together. And so I was working on a portfolio, and David Finch, who lives in my area where I grew up, I sent my portfolio to him through an email. And I was just praying about it. And I was just saying, Lord, if this is where you want me to go, open the door. If not, close it. Like, I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yeah, that's bold.
And the door just opened, and then that door opened another door. And it was like the doors just kept blowing open. And I was like, okay, this is the path I'm going down. And and then that's where I am now. And I've always I've never been afraid to share my faith, because in my opinion, it's God it's the reason why I'm here doing this job is because of God. He's given me a talent. He's given me an eye for detail and storytelling and all these things. And I want to give him the glory. And I one of the verses that I've always, my dad used to talk about a lot was Colossians 3:23. Do all things as unto the Lord. And so, he would always say to me, it doesn't matter if you're playing hockey, if you're working, if you're drawing, whatever you do it like as if Jesus is the one who's going to critique you, or it's for him. And so it's like, okay, like I'm going to try and do that. And I fail at that, like we all do. And I fail at that in my job as well sometimes, but I really try to make sure that everything is kind of lined up with that. And even with tougher projects or projects that are a little like Three Jokers, it's more mature than of a thing that I've ever done. But if you read it, there actually is a gospel like story in there.
There's some redemption at the very end. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's kind of my, off the top of my head, that's kind of my journey and how I got here. And there's all kinds of ups and downs and rises and falls and everything else, like we all have.
Yeah, no, I see that, man. Colossians 3:23, man, right here. So with that in view, and with that as in a sense, kind of your life purpose, how do you choose those comics projects? Because as you mentioned with Three Jokers, some of them can get pretty violent. So how do you choose those projects, and how's your faith inform that? And then I guess along those lines, how do you draw the Joker beating someone up with a crowbar or Wonder Woman to the glory of God?
Yeah. So how I've always prayed about the projects I'm doing. I've always prayed, Lord, open up this door, or that project or that door, and protect me. I always pray, like, God, protect me so that I don't have stuff put before me that I don't want to draw, or that I am against drawing. And you know what? He's come through with that. He's come through with that. There's only been a couple there's been a couple times where I wish I would have spoken up about something that I had to draw, but I just did it and then moved on, kind of thing. And there's been things I've drawn too that I look back and think, I shouldn't have drawn that, or whatever. I made that woman look too sexy or whatever. I've always tried to have a good balance with things. Yeah. Like you said, Wonder Woman. It's like, I believe that, you're drawing superheroes, so you're drawing characters and human beings who are supposed to be at peak physical attractiveness and athletic ability. These are ideal
forms.
Yes, they're the ideal forms, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I often wonder if in heaven, if we're not going to all look like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we're not going to have that ideal perfect form, and the way that we're supposed to be, because that's, I mean, I don't know. Like I kind of wonder that. I think that you can look on somebody. Like I've been really into working out and exercising. I had a health scare a couple years ago where I really hurt myself physically, and I was just sitting so much, and it kind of woke me up. I was like, I got to start exercising again and being serious. So it's like I can look at like I can draw a male character, and he's ripped and he's jacked, and you're drawing every muscle, and you're making him look idealized. Well, you got to kind of do the same thing with the female form too, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Where it crosses the line is if you're sexualizing it way too much. And it's like, that's where, like, I like Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman, she's beautiful, she's strong, but you don't have to sexualize her. She can still, she should just be she's about power and
grace.
Grace. She can stand up in a fight. You don't have to push it as much. Like, whereas if you're drawing like Catwoman, you got to kind of put a little of that femme fatale kind of body language in there, because that's who the character is. The other thing I also do is I think, because I remember I have a great pastor who Pastor Kevin Scott here at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Windsor, Ontario. I'll shout him out. And he and I do book studies and stuff like that. He's been a really good mentor, and I do a lot of discipleship with him. And we talk a lot about this kind of stuff because these are things that not only myself, but other Christian artists, we wrestle with some of these things sometimes. And it's like, and, he always just kind of, he'll say stuff like, well, if you were to take the Bible and just do a 1-for-1, retelling, especially like David. David's a character I love because I really feel like I am kind of in his shoes. I think a lot of men relate to David because
that's good. Yeah.
We have, I think as men and as Christian men, we have a heart that we long after God, but we get caught off track. We see the Bathshebas and we go wander after that or wander after this. And then God has to discipline us and kind of get us back on the track. And that's and it's like, if you took David's story and you did that as a comic book 1-for-1, you didn't we didn't, flamograph story it the way we do with our kids in a Sunday school. it would be a pretty hard rated M mature, story. Yeah. But it's to know when to do those things, when to push things and when not to. And you use it for certain, sometimes you want to use it for shock. Sometimes like in the case of Three Jokers, I knew where the ending was going to be, but I also knew that we had to show this character as evil and dark.
Yes.
And the whole story revolved around the three heroes, Batman, Batgirl, and Red Hood. Batman's kind of in the middle. He's for justice, but it's at the same time, it's like, well, how can he allow the Joker to keep doing this evil? Barbara Gordon, who's had massive tragedy, is not allowing that tragedy to control her. She's kind of believes in like forgiveness, and she's been able to move on and use those scars and those bad things in her life to allow her to become stronger.
Oh, I mean, the sequence you did with her on the treadmill sticks with me, how she pushes herself. She's faster than she's ever been, but she just keeps pushing herself so much, it breaks the treadmill. Yeah. I mean, that was art, man. That was really good. I remember that sequence. It stuck with me. Yeah.
And so she's that side of the coin, which is, I think, kind of lines up with, all things work together for good to those who love God. I mean, it's kind of like that. Like, can you take the scars of life and see them as something that God is using to essentially make you better, to draw you closer to Him? And then on the other side, you have Jason Todd, Red Hood, who's also had tragedies, but he's allowing the tragedies to lead him down a path of vengeance and revenge. And it's like Batman could become a Red Hood character. He could become a murderer. He could go down that. And so the whole story kind of was a lot of that. It was like justice versus vengeance. And then there was like a whole kind of thing in there with forgiveness and with the Joe Chill story and like that kind of a story. Like Geoff had said to me, like I trust Geoff quite a bit when we're working together. He knows me. He knows what I believe. And he doesn't put me in situations where I'm going to draw something that I don't want to do. We talk a lot about story, and he'll ask me, especially with Jokers, he was like, look, I want to go this direction. Are you okay with this? And he would say, I want to go this direction because it's going to lead to this over here, but we need this effect here to affect the reader so that you see this, blah, 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 and it leads to this good over here at the end, this light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And it's like, if I understand that, then yes, we're not, then I know where I'm going. But again, a lot of praying about it. If I can, there's one thing about Three Jokers I want to talk about. I don't know if I've ever really talked about this.
Go for it.
But so this is a big spoiler. So if you've never read Batman Three Jokers, you might want to shut this off at this point. Go read the book. Come back.
That's right. Skip ahead. Pick up the book, guys. It is a good human read. There's a lot of insight in there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
So one of the stories I always wanted to tell ever since I was small was I wanted to tell a story about Bruce Wayne forgiving the man who murdered his parents.
Right.
And the reason why I wanted to tell that story is because everybody's always trying to find the thing that's going to make Bruce Wayne happy or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, he can get married. Yeah, he could have kids, all this kind of stuff. But the thing that would actually truly bring freedom to his soul would be, well, it would be to find Christ, number one.
Yeah.
But to be able to forgive the murder of his parents and finally let that rest and heal, right? But I always thought, DC will never allow that, because that kind of, in some ways, it kind of breaks the character. You want him to be a vengeful, maybe not vengeful, but you want him to be kind of like still struggling with that, because it's a core part of his character. It's kind of what makes him cool. It's like,
well, yeah, the animated series, I am vengeance, I am the night. I mean, it's like, okay, well, that's who you're going to be then. You made your decision.
Yeah, for sure. So it's part of his character. So, but I always wanted to do that story, and there was a couple comic artists I've even told that I wanted to do that story. And then, so here's Geoff all of a sudden. He doesn't know any of this. He calls me up one day. This is years before we started Three Jokers, and he says, I got this story I want to pitch you. And so he's pitching me Three Jokers, and he gets to the whole part with Joe Chill, and he's laying out how he's like, we're going to have Joe Chill, and Bruce Wayne's going to forgive Joe Chill for the murder of his parents. And I was in shock, because it's like, that's how I knew I had to do this story, because it was literally, it was the story. That was the story. And we talked a lot about it, and we talked about how we were going to get there. And, Geoff was like, I don't want it to be too preachy. I still want it to be, I want it to be subtle, but really the gospel is there. I mean, he's in prison, he's dying, Joe Chill's dying of cancer, and he's talking with, we have the pastor of like the chaplain, and he's like saying like, Joe Chill's changed his life and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if you put two and two together, it's because he's become a believer. And it's like, and then he wants to, at the end, Batman has to save him pretty much from the Joker.
Right.
And in the end, we have this very silent, we have a silent scene where Bruce is sitting next to the dying Joe Chill, holding his hand as the meter, EKG meter or whatever, goes down, and he dies. And it's like, originally we were going to have like a note, and you're going to read the words, but Geoff was like, I think it's more powerful if we don't see the note, but just the body language is telling you that note is important. And Bruce has now forgiven this man and able to close that scar off. And it's like, to me, that's the most important part of the story. And then Geoff being a great writer has this great twist where you find out that the Joker set all this up because he knows who Bruce Wayne is, and he wants to be the main scar of Batman, and he could never be unless he was able to heal the rift between Bruce and Joe Chill, which is a genius level kind of maniacal thing that the Joker would think
complete Joker thing to do. Yeah.
So that was a great little twist on top of that. But it's just, that's like that to me, that was a God thing. That was like God laid out that story, and it was violent. It was dark. It's not for kids.
No.
But in the end, there is a light at the end of it. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to do that story. And I did push some of my boundaries on that one, especially. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever go back and do that kind of a story again. But it would be kind of like if you're doing like Passion of the Christ. Like, I mean, it's going to be a very violent movie, but there's a reason for all of it. And it kind of, in the end, that the ending is a good thing. So it's like you got to kind of go through the sludge to get to that good ending, the light, So yeah.
No, I see that in your storytelling, man. I saw in an exchange with you and Tom King, this was a few years back. We're kind of on the Batman lane right now. I think it was over a Batman issue Tom had written, where essentially Bruce is comparing himself to Job, and there's a ton of just scriptural alliterations in there and everything. And you brought up something really good, is like you said, hey, I think comics are a great place to highlight more aspects of faith. You mentioned Superman, which I think is a pretty clear and actually a really, really good one. how can comics do this really well as far as highlighting aspects of our faith? You touched on it some with Three Jokers, but what are other examples, and how do you think the art form can highlight aspects of faith?
Well, I think number one, really, all great stories kind of have their genesis point in the Bible.
So
Excuse
true.
the pun, but it's like, if you look at most stories, most movies, most films, most TV, whatever, all of it really goes back to biblical stories. And whether you're taking a kind of a David versus Goliath kind of thing and, modernizing it or changing it around, or Daniel in the lion's den, or even the stories of Jesus or Paul and all this kind of stuff, Revelation stuff. There's lots of great stuff in there. The Genesis stories, Noah's Ark, all of these things, like they're the foundations of a lot of our storytelling, especially in the West, go back to a biblical kind of foundation.
Yeah, primal. And, they're really primal stories.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, even Superman, like Jeff and I were actually talking about this the other day, and it's like you can't help but look at characters like a Superman and think, well, he's kind of like a Moses, he's kind of like a Jesus. He's got those bits and pieces of a son sent, to Earth to, show them the way and be a savior in a way, and it's like, I don't know if that's originally what the intent was of the character. Sometimes I think, honestly, we overthink a lot of things, and it's just like literally the writer's like, we got to figure out why he's got superpowers. Well, he came from another planet. All right, yeah, and then we kind of take that and we start to read into that or like expand as time goes by and add to the mythology. But it works with the mythology as well.
Yeah.
With Superman, I always felt like he should be guy was born in, like, he was raised in Kansas. Like he probably would have went to church every Sunday, in a small town. And especially when at the time the books were written, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, as that mythology was built out. I think Superman, he would be a believer. Like, I think he just would be, because he would have been, and he shows a lot of those aspects of a Christian upbringing anyway. At least he did. I don't read much Superman stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, I know you did Man of Steel, some of it anyway. And really got to focus on those family aspects. I know Jeff Loeb touched on it, I think, pretty powerfully in Superman for All Seasons. So it's kind of always weaved in there. I'm a Superman guy, so keep up with him, at least what's going on.
Yeah, Superman's always been one of my favorite heroes. Like, I love the original movie, the Richard Donner movie.
Oh yeah,
it's still one of my go-tos. And but there's things like that. I think, sadly, just like everything, our world, we've kind of lost touch with especially in the West, we've lost touch with a lot of those things that made that gave us a heritage and a biblical culture. We move away from it, and then we wonder why there's all these problems, and then eventually we kind of go back towards it, and we start embracing that stuff again. And I'm kind of seeing that shift kind of happening right now. I think with a lot of younger people, it's like they're just lost, and it's like, okay, then they're going back to like, okay, well, how come things are so bad? And then they realize, I think it's because we've abandoned a lot of our faith, and people who, in the, like, when my grandparents, everybody went to church. You went to church, even I don't even know, like, even if people weren't necessarily sold out believers, they still went. It was part of what you did. And so you couldn't help but have those morals and those biblical values kind of rubbing off on you and leading you and guiding you in your conscience and all these kinds of things. And now a lot of I think the superhero stuff, and it's almost like in movies and films and TV, it's like a replacement version of morals and values, but there's no, it doesn't have, it may take from biblical morals and values and core beliefs, but it's not that. It's like because they don't want to go too far. They don't want to say it's from God. They don't want, you know. And so again, you kind of create these fake kind of moral lessons, and some of them, some are really good. Some books have a great moral lesson that you can, you know, latch onto. And I would love to see more of it done, but.
Well, you never know, man. I mean, you know, kind of the backlash on superhero movies right now, I think the problem is they just lack a transcendence. It's exactly what you describe. Yeah. We can only tell that story so many times without understanding the origin of where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think companies are just scared too. They're scared of doing something that's faith-based, even though you got things like The Chosen, which is, you know, a really well done, great TV show. It's done on a budget, but you wouldn't be able to really tell, you know, like it's very well done, great actors, great storytelling. It's fictionalized, but it's got enough of the biblical stories and truths there, and they expand out from it, which I think is interesting because it's something we've never seen. Yeah. And look at it's very popular. It's probably made a lot of money, so it's profitable. But you know, and every once in a while, Hollywood gets on a thing where they want to do some biblical themed movies, but then usually they don't have the right people operating them, and they go off in some other crazy direction.
Yeah, you get the Noah rock monsters with Russell Crowe. It's just like, where did we go off here?
If you were like, which drives me nuts, because if you read Genesis, there's enough mythology there with the Nephilim, and you could, whatever you believe Nephilim are. But if you wanted to treat them as giant, you know, demigods that ruled the land, you got enough of a high fantasy action. Like, you don't need to make them rock monsters. Just make them giant human beings. Like it just decisions like that just blow my mind. It's like,
I know. It's like, I would love to be in the committee room where everyone said, "Yep, we're hand stacked on this idea." It's just so many things that get made.
Well, that movie was even based on a comic book as well. It was a comic book.
Didn't know that.
So that's where the rock monsters were probably in the comic book, and they followed the comic book instead of. But again, it's like, I don't know. You know, there's a great book series. Just as a little side, there's an author. His name is Brian Godawa, and I read the first book. It was about Noah, and he did these series of books that take place in that antediluvian world, where it's like he's taking the mythology, I'll say, of that Genesis with like the Nephilim and what would have been like, and how was things so depraved, and were there angelic beings that were pretending to be gods who were sharing knowledge with people, and Noah was called out of that, and it's really like cool, and it's like high fantasy, but biblical high fantasy, and it's like this kind of stuff would make for a great movie. Yeah, as long as you had the right people in mind, kind of leading it and directing it and building it.
So true.
But again, you know, I don't know if we'll ever really see that.
I love it, man. Like you are a creative and a storyteller. And it's fun to get to have that conversation with you. Did you ever doubt that this is what God had for you to do with your life? Was there ever a rough patch, even after, you know, you kind of hit it big with DC?
It still comes even to this day. I sometimes, and a lot of it comes because there's a curse that comes with being an artist, and it's that you can never truly enjoy your work.
So true.
You see every flaw. You know, and I used to really struggle with this because I wanted things to be perfect. And one of my editors, Brian Cunningham, who's actually with us now at Ghost Machine, he said to me one time on the phone, he said, "You'll never draw perfection, Jay," but he says, "But you can strive for excellence." That's two different things. Excellence isn't perfection. It's giving your best you can do with the time you're given. Sometimes you only have an hour to draw a panel. Can you draw it to the best of your ability within that hour and then move on? Because that's what you got to do to keep up your deadline, right? And so but my confidence takes some pretty big hits. And my wife, she has to hear me grumble about this and has to, and sometimes you have to just fight your way through those points. I think every artist deals with it. Any artist who says that they don't have confidence issues is lying. Because I've talked to some of the best artists in the world, like guys that the comic book artists that I look up to, and they don't see their work as anything special. They see all the flaws, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe I drew it like that." And you're looking at it like, that's a perfect page, and they're like, "No, I did this wrong." And it's a struggle. And sometimes I sit there and I can get pretty down on myself, and I think like, why am I still doing this? I just wanted to go do something else. But then I sit there and I think, well, what else am I going to do? And I think this does each book and each project is a war, and you go through it, and it's a lot of problem solving, and it's a lot of like stresses, like mentally stressed out, because I've often described comic books as like putting together a puzzle. It's one giant problem. You're given a script and you read the script, but now you got to take these 4 panels, you got to arrange them on a page so that they flow. Each panel has to be different, because you don't want to choose all medium shots, because then it's boring. You want like a big shot, you want a small shot, you want a pulled back shot. And sometimes you have to draw things that are really hard to draw at weird angles. And it's a war, like you're fighting through it. And but the really awesome thing is that you get through it, and a couple months later you're kind of working on something else, and a couple months later the book comes out, and you go and you pick it up at the store, and you go, oh wow, like I did that, like that's pretty cool, like I drew a book. And then people, I've been blessed to be able to go to comic conventions and meet people, and they bring up the book, and it's sometimes funny, like a book that you think you didn't really do a good job on, or nobody will ever think about, or you're not really too happy with. That's the book that somebody will come up and say to you, like, this was my first comic. Yeah. I love this book so much. And it's just like, and you're just like, wow, like and you don't want to tell them, but I'm thinking like that, I hate that book. Like that's the worst book I ever drew, like from my own, like, but it meant something to somebody, or it helped get somebody into the hobby or whatever. And, and so that's when you get these little payoffs that kind of make it all worth it. But I find that art and drawing is very, very hard for me. It doesn't flow out of me really naturally. I have to fight with it and get it to a point, and then put on the little details and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, it doesn't flow out of me as easily as it does some other guys. But other artists would probably say the same thing. Oh, it's a fight for me every day too. And so, no,
you remind me of, I think, is it Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art? It's a little book about that very thing that you just described, which is like to try and create art is a fight. Absolutely. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I need to read that. I would love to read the book.
I think you'd enjoy it, actually. Yeah. There's some colorful language in there, dealing with war and things, but it's a really helpful book for a creative. You've also benefited, man, and I've heard you talk about this too. You shared in other spaces about your great friendship and collaboration, particularly with Geoff Johns, who I think is my favorite comic writer of all time. I can remember things that Geoff wrote that I was reading in college and in young adulthood that really impacted me. And also Brad Anderson as well, who does some of your line work. Will you share with us what those men mean to you, but both as a man and also just as professional creative collaborators?
Yeah. I'll start with the collaborators first. Geoff, I started working with him in 2014. That was on the Mesovirus, the Justice League run. And, I always tell the story how he called me one night at like 1 a.m. my time. He's on LA time and I'm on Eastern time.
Yeah.
So he calls me at night and I'm like, why is like Geoff Johns wants to call? Like I've never talked to him before. Really, I met him like once or twice at a con, but, and immediately we just kind of clicked and really worked well together. And he is, as a creative, he understands story unlike anybody I've ever met. Like he can take the little sprinkle of an idea and weave it into something, and it's got all these plot, and he really understands emotion and character. Yes. Everything with him is about the character first. It's not about the big action adventure. It's about the action adventure is great. He knows how to write that, but it's about the character and the arc that character is going to go through and how they're going to change and how we can relate to them as the reader. Yeah. And he puts a lot of universal truths in his stories that we can all relate to with these heroes, Flash and Green Lantern and Superman and all that kind of stuff. He's a great collaborator. He wants to hear. He's the only writer I've ever worked with. The only one. I've worked with a bunch of them, and they're great. I've worked with great writers, like guys like Tom King on that Swamp Thing book. I really enjoyed that. But Geoff is 100% about collaboration. He calls you every day. I get a call from Geoff every day, and we talk over story. We talk over ideas. If I have an idea, I'm not afraid to throw it out there. He'll usually take it and put it in the story in some way. But he's all about the collaboration because he understands that comic books is an art form of words and story, but mixed with the art. And if you don't have both clicking, then you're not going to have a very good comic book. And you can tell the comic books where the artist and the writer are clicking and on the same page. And you can tell the ones that are just kind of you're thrown together and it's like, do this thing because it's a monthly book. And so, from a work standpoint, collaboration standpoint, we just click and we know each other. We can be open with each other. I'm not afraid to say to him, I don't know if I want to draw that, or hey, what about this? Or what about that? And he can say to me the same thing. Hey, why don't you try this in this page? Or can you add this to it? Or can you change that over here? And I'm never offended by that. We just kind of take it as like, yep, okay, that's going to make our thing better. Let's keep going. Same with Brad too. I mean, Brad, I've become really close with him, and he is an amazing colorist. I think he's the best in the business. And again, it's like we have that kind of same thing where it's like I don't have to tell him really what I want. I just send him the thing, and he knows exactly. Like it's amazing how many times he'll send me back a page, and I'm like, that's exactly how the colors I wanted on it.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
He just knows. With the stuff we're doing now with Rook, I had some very specific kind of things, but as we've gone through, it's now he knows. We've kind of laid a groundwork and a foundation of this color schemes. Now he can play with that and he can move it and he can do different things with it. But that's collaboration wise. Brad and I we're clicking. We're on the same page. It's like I kind of if you've ever played in a band with people, if you really are clicking as a band, it's like you don't even have to, you just look in the guitar player's eyes and you and him, and you're just walking and you're going and you're just, it's like you're one mind. It's like that and with the drums and everything, that's kind of how it begins to be when you're collaborating with really good artists, especially in comics. It's just like a band. You're just jamming. As a man, Geoff, I consider him a best friend. I consider him a very close friend. Almost like a big brother. He jokes about that. He always says, I don't want to sound like your big brother, or I don't want to, I forget how he words it, but it's something like, I don't want to keep sounding like I'm your big brother telling you this, but this is kind of how I think of you. I think of you as like my little brother and I want to tell you about. And so we talk quite a lot about story and comics, but we also talk a lot about life and struggles and things that are going on. He's got a young family. I have a young family. We talk a lot about just life in general, doubts of life, business stuff, how to get through comic business, how to stay humble, how to stay joyous and happy. Where I was even just the other day with our new books that are coming out, I said to him, I said, I know that we did a good job. I know we did a good book, but I'm nervous. This isn't Batman. This is a new thing. Are people going to like it? And he said, Jay, he's like, sometimes you do work and you think, it's kind of like, oh, this isn't my best work. So, it probably is going to get trashed. And maybe I'll agree with that review. But he's like, with things like Three Jokers and with Rook, he's like, I know we did a great job.
Yeah.
So even if people don't like it, I love it. It was something that came out of my heart, and we love this story. We love these characters. So you can't allow that to affect how your opinion on it. You just go with it, and we will find an audience because we know we have a good thing, and I don't know. There's just little things like that, and he challenges me too, on my faith sometimes too, and he'll say things like, well, is that how Jesus would want you to act in that situation? And it's like sometimes he knows what I believe, and I think he would say that he believes similar to me in a lot of things.
I've caught that in some of his writing. I'm just like, man, you're close. Like there's just some things there in the writing that.
Yeah. So and so sometimes we'll talk about some faith-based things. One of the things we talk a lot about is the fact of things will happen in its time. And that's something that sometimes I'm impatient and I want things to happen. Like with Rook, we've been working on this for a long time. And there was times where like, let's just get it out like a year ago. And he said, it's just not ready yet. When it's ready, it'll happen in its time and it'll be for the best. And now it's like, okay, he was right having that. And he would admit that he wasn't patient like that when he was my age either. He was brash and he's learned over time. And so it's kind of cool because he's about 10, 15 years ahead of me in the experience game.
Yeah.
And he's been through a lot with working at Warner Brothers, at DC Films, and running DC. He's got a very different perspective now than he had when he was 35, 38, like I am now. And so it's like, and so I can learn from that, and I love him. I think again, he's a very, very close friend of mine. I consider him a brother, and I'm so pleased that I've been able to find a person like that that we can create together and be on the same track. And go down this path together and go to war on a comic book together, and it's just and it just makes this so much more fulfilling, and to share it with somebody like that, because to be honest, like I have lots of ideas, but I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer. I've learned that. I've learned that I'm a storyteller, but I can't. My brain does not think the same way his brain thinks. His brain is wired in such a way, like I said, like he can see the puzzle of the story laid out. He can see the beginning and the end, and he can weave it all in this great tapestry and weave it out to get to this end point. And he can get all this emotion and twists and turns, and he just thinks of things.
Yeah.
I don't think that way. I think hero. He's got a sword and he's going to run in and fight all these guys. And I'm more and we joke about this because he likes the emotion. I like the brawn. Like I like I just want to draw the action, the adventure, and the punching and the fighting and the action and stuff. And he's literally like, no, we got to balance that. It's got to be a balance. And so we're a good team like that because we balance each other out. He would probably lean more towards the story and the emotion more than the action adventure. And that's with Rook. We're learning like how this story needs to be and what kind of a book it is. And by balancing those two things. But and Brad, the same thing. Brad's a little older than me. He's got a little more experience in comics. We're both Canadian. We both love hockey.
There it is.
We joke and make fun of each other for our hockey teams and when they lose and they play each other and whatnot. But again, I'm very close with him too. And it's funny, I don't talk to Brad as much. I only see him every once in a while at a convention. But it's like the minute we're together, it's like, oh yeah, hey, how are you doing? It's like those friendships where you just feel like you've known them forever, even though you really haven't, and that's kind of how it is with both of them.
Oh man, no, it's fun to have men, and that's something I admire, man. And that's an aspiration for every man, is to find those men that you trust, that you want to go to battle with. It's fun to get to hear about that. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jason. And now, I mean, you guys are in new territory. It's a new frontier with Ghost Machine and Launch and Rook. So we're on the elevator right now. You're launching Rook Exodus as a book. What's the story about?
Yeah. Well, just going back into Ghost Machine.
Yeah.
Ghost Machine is an idea that has kind of just naturally developed out of Geoff and Gary Frank doing a book called Geiger at Image Comics. And then they started expanding that universe with another book called Junkyard Joe, which is a really great read.
It's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Brian Hitch came in and was going to do he's doing a book called Red Coat, and they kind of set that up there. And Geoff and I, after Three Jokers, we started talking about what we wanted to do. And we were going to do a Three Jokers sequel, and we had an idea, and DC kind of at that time was going through a lot of changes.
Yeah. Never
gave us the green light. And I kind of got frustrated, and I said, you know what? I want to do something brand new. It's like we could go out, let's go do, we even threw out there, let's do Spider-Man, let's do X-Men. And I said, no, you know what? I've really, my mindset started to change after Three Jokers, where it was like everything it seems in entertainment is just a rehash of something that's been around for 80 years. Like, how many Star Wars movies do you really need? If the first three were the only ones you needed.
Hot take.
I don't like any of the other Star Wars movies, but those originals are my favorite movies ever. And same thing with Lord of the Rings. It's like, you got Lord of the Rings, you got The Hobbit. You don't need any spin-off stuff. It's just like, just leave it at that. But I wanted to start creating something new. And I really have a passion for that. And I really found myself gravitating towards new independent ideas. And one of the, I'm kind of rambling here, but I'll get back to the Rook thing. But
no, you're good, man.
One of the things, like I remember watching like the first season of Stranger Things, and I was just like, this feels like something from like a 1980s, like, you know, like Goonies kind of thing mixed with a Steven Spielberg Alien and monsters kind of, but it feels new. It feels old, like you could, like, it feels like it may have existed. It's got Dungeons and Dragons in it and all this kind of, but it also feels new. And it's like, that's great. Like we need more of this. We need more new ideas and new properties and new things. And and so after Three Jokers, I was like, let's do a creator-owned book. You're doing Geiger with Gary. Let's do a book. And so we started throwing out these ideas, and I had this character in my head for a long time called Rook. And he's pretty much looked the same since about 2012. This guy with a bird mask that's like a silver metal bird mask and a trench coat. And I didn't really know, again, go back to the thing where I'm not really a storyteller. I kind of knew I want to draw this. I want to draw that. I want him to have a cool car. But I didn't know what the world was. I didn't know what the story was. And I pitched it to Geoff, and at first he was kind of like, he liked the characters, but he's like, hey, what's the story? Like, who is this guy? And I said, I don't know. That's your job. You're the writer. You come up with something. And he said, well, give me one night. I'll come up with something. And so, comes back the next day with this huge universe. And essentially Rook it's like Star Wars meets Mad Max meets Clint Eastwood. And it's about this farmer from Earth who goes to this planet that we call Exodus. And this planet was in full control by humanity. It takes place in the future, and it's full control by humanity. They could control everything from the plant life to building cities to even the animal life. And they use these different helmets to do this, to the weather. And they made this utopia, and Earth is dying in our future, and all these people leave Earth to go to this planet for a new start. And Rook runs away from his problems on Earth to go to this planet. And he becomes one of these characters called a warden, who wears these animal helmets that allows him to control certain animal species. He can control crows and rooks and blackbirds and this kind of thing. And he can neural link with them. He can understand what they're saying. He can give them commands. But then everything went bad on this planet. The world engines that kept it habitable started to die. And the rich people who could, they left to go to the next planet. And Rook and a whole bunch of other survivors, people who couldn't get off the planet, are left behind. And now it's become sort of a survival of the fittest. And you have Rook, who can control the birds. We have a character called Direwolf. She has a pack of wolves and she can control them. And we have another character called Swine, who is command wild boars. And we really started playing up with this idea. And it's like, at first we thought, is this too cheesy? Like these guys with helmets that can control animals. But then we were thinking about it and we're like, you know what? A lot of great stuff is kind of cheesy, but it's just, is it fun? Is it fun? Is it cool? And we really kind of reminded us of things like He-Man and 80s cartoon shows.
Oh yeah.
And every character has a vehicle that kind of looks like an animal. And the animal that they're in control of, and it's really this big action adventure story. But there's a lot of great themes in the story. Rook, when we first meet him, he's trying to escape off this planet. He's a scavenger. He's like a crow. He's scavenging rocket ship parts from all these crashed rockets that people are trying to escape off this planet with. And he's trying to build his own rocket to get off this planet. And his friends are sitting there saying, like, where are you going to go? And also, like, you're just going to run. You're gonna, every time there's a problem in life, you're just going to run. You're going to, and a big theme of the story is fight or flight. And Rook kind of gets challenged by this in our story, and he has to rise up to become that hero to hopefully stay and fight for the people who are being terrorized by our villain, who's this guy called Ursa, who he's in control of bears, and he's like genetically modified himself to be like a giant, and has giant, like 30-foot tall, bears that he can command with. They have giant machine guns on their backs, and he's using this power of nature for his own, like he's like a warlord, and he's trying to take over the planet and control it, and Rook has to make a decision, and is he going to stay and help his friends? And we kind of have these themes running through. We have themes of nature versus technology. We're going to have themes of like stewardship over nature, which is again something that Geoff and I have talked about, like the biblical understanding of our place in nature is we are stewards over it. Sometimes you have to you raise those pigs, and you raise pigs, you raise cattle and you treat them well and with kindness and all these things, and you feed them well, but that at some point you're going to have to slaughter one to feed your family. So there's a give and there's a take with nature, and I feel that's the biblical mandate that God gives Adam in the garden is to be a gardener, to subdue it, but to be just like everything in life, it's to be a steward over it. And those lessons. Those are lessons that I feel we, as humans, we go one direction or the other. We go to these far extremes where we worship the earth and we're the scumbags. And it's like, no, we're part of this whole, we're part of nature. We're part of everything, and we're supposed to be stewards of it. And so there's going to be themes of that, but it's all wrapped up in a big action adventure. I mean, we're not getting too preachy with this. But it's fun to play with these ideas and these and this world and the connection between humans and animals. We as human beings, we have most of us have a pet. We either have a dog, we have a cat, we might have a bird or whatever, and we grow fond of these animals. Especially with dogs, they love us. They become our best friends, and it's like there is a connection there with nature, and people have befriended wolves and bears and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes it ends really horribly, but it is there, and it's like we get to explore that in this story too, and it's a different kind of book because of the fact that it's something that comes right out of our imaginations. And so with Batman, when Geoff says Batman goes to the Gotham Aquarium, I already know what the Gotham Aquarium looks like. Because I have a design kind of foundation for the way I would want to draw a Gotham City. And so you're pulling from things like the Tim Burton movies and this and that, and you design an aquarium that could kind of fit with that world. But when Geoff says something like, the bad guy's driving in a giant tank that kind of looks like a bear, it's like, well, where do I even begin? I've
Oh,
never
man,
seen.
yeah, you're
something,
starting from scratch. Man.
or there's a city in issue 3 that it's a city built in an old abandoned hydroelectric dam on like a Niagara Falls kind of thing. But it's like a city that people built. So it's like you can't, like, I gotta figure out, what does that look like? What is the culture? Like, why,
Wow.
what kind of building
Yeah.
design would they do? It takes place in the future too. Are they using like futuristic materials? Or are they using wood and whatever?
Love
And
it.
it's like, it's double the amount of time, because I really have to think of everything and how does it fit with this universe and the design kind of language that I built through this book. And it's, I've had a lot of nights where I'm just like saying to my wife, like, why did I ever take this on? Like, this is so hard. But then you get the book in your hands, or you see a cool character design, or you see fan art from somebody, and you're sitting there going like, wow, like, this is pretty cool.
Wow.
Like, we've created something I really feel that is unique.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do. And we're really excited for this. We have on April 3rd, Rook Exodus #1 comes out, along with Geiger #1 and Redcoat #1. And that's kind of our 3 launch books from myself, Geoff, Gary Frank, and Brian Hitch, Brad Anderson coloring. And we feel like what we wanted to do with Ghost Machine was we wanted to create a company where us as the creators own the company. And we own our creations. We can guide our creations how we want. We can deal with them how we want. And everybody's bringing their own sensibilities to it. My book is going to be different from a book from Gary Frank. Him and Jeff are going to work and collaborate to make something that tells the story that they want to tell. And Rook's going to be its own thing, and other writers are going to write their own things. But we wanted that freedom, because that's something that we didn't really have. You don't really have that at DC or Marvel.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have the control to take these IPs and these properties that we create and be in control of them, and not only in control of them now, but in control of them when, God willing, we make a movie or a TV show or a video game. It's like we can have a say because we have an ownership in it.
So good.
And so really, it's about us trying to, and it's at Image Comics. They kind of did that in the 90s, but we've kind of taken their formula and we really looked at what they did right and what they did wrong. And we tried to make it better for us, better for the whole team, better for all the creators that we're bringing in. And it's been a wonderful experience. We're getting ready to launch everything. We've grown close as a team. Everybody comes from different backgrounds and different, cultures and life experiences, but we've all found a common purpose, and we just want to tell great action adventure comic books like the ones that we all love and we've always loved. Good. And something for everybody. We got these first 3 books are more action adventure. I really, with Rook, just so that the audience knows, there's some guns in it. And there's a couple mentions of alcohol, because when we meet him, he's kind of in a very rough spot, and he's battling a lot of stuff, and the crows are kind of getting in his head, and he's kind of like self-medicating by to try to get this out of his head. And we're going to see him grow as a character, but we've really made sure that there's no language in there. I wanted my 8-year-old son has been asking to read Rook now for 2 years, and we read it last night together. And the first question he asked me is, "Dad, where's the second issue?" And I said, "Well, buddy, it's not out yet." And he's like, "Yeah, but you're like on issue 5, 6." I'm like, "Yeah, but they come out, like, it takes months for it." He couldn't really understand it, but he wanted to read the next one.
No, it's true. So they don't understand that, television used to be weekly. Like if you missed it, you missed it. They don't get that. Dude, that makes me so happy, because I was talking with my boys. They're currently 9 and 13, about to be 10 and 14. And I was telling them about Ghost Machine, particularly about Rook Exodus. They're like, "That's so cool. Is that something we can read?" So thank you for confirming that, because as you know, it's hard to find any modern comics that are good, that are usually age appropriate, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you guys for creating that. I'm so in. Like, I cannot wait for it.
I would say to parents though, like, always read what your kids want. Like,
good advice.
Read Rook. If you don't feel it's appropriate for your son or daughter, then don't give it to them right now. Like there is some violence in it. There's some dead animals. Like I said, he's a little bit rougher on the edges. You think of him kind of as like a Clint Eastwood cowboy.
Yeah.
He's kind of lost his way. But you got to be one of the things is you have to build some character flaws into your characters because they have to have a place to grow. And I also think too that as Christians, as storytellers, we shouldn't be afraid to make our characters flawed and sinners. Let's be honest, because we all have things that we deal with. We all have struggles. We all have personal temptations and whatnot. And those things being put into a story, people can relate to those things. And then as you take that character and they grow and they become what they're supposed to become throughout the story, you can really, people can really relate to that. And you can tell a great moral story about a character beating these demons or that or whatever, and becoming better as a person, as a man. And so,
true.
I think, So you're going to see some of that in Rook, but I think a 10-year-old kid could probably read it and be fine, and we want to keep it at that too. So
no, that's fun, man. What you talk about is those people having flaws. The Bible does not shy away from that.
No,
from those real people, and just putting all of humanity right on display. So I love that kind of storytelling. I'm really looking forward to it. Want to segue just real fast into a segment of the show I call Everywhere Every Day. And that's just a more personal conversation with a guest on how they kind of live, move, observe, and be. It's really born out of my own curiosity about what do different people do all day. So man, I wanted to ask you, because you've weaved a lot of kind of your daily life into our conversation already. But one of the questions I had for you is, as an artist, I think every artist, writer has this. What is some of the art that you're most proud of creating, but feel not as many people have seen or know about?
Yeah, that one's a little tough, because I think I was thinking about this, and I've been very blessed in the fact that almost everything I ever worked on did very well and sold very well, and was read by a lot of people. Like right now the comic book industry is in a little bit of, it's in a down. Sales are down, but like when we were doing like Batman and Justice League stuff, we were selling like 80 to 100,000 copies of these books. Like they were pretty widely read books. The Swamp Thing book that I did that won an Eisner Award wasn't a very high seller, and people kind of discover that one as they go along. And it's it's a different book. It's more of a horror story. Yeah.
It's a very human story though. I'm not a Swamp Thing guy. And because you worked on it, I was like, man, I got to check this out. It's a one shot. So it's, self-contained. And I really appreciate what you guys did there. I think that the key to that for me has always been the storytelling. I think that's why those books did so well.
Yeah. And so that one's one I'm really proud of, because I always loved Swamp Thing growing up, and I wanted to do a Swamp Thing story. And I pitched a story to Tom, and he just gave me the opposite, which is kind of funny. But I read the script and I went, it's not what I would do, but it's different, and it makes for a pretty good story. Like it's kind of cool. So I'm going to do it. And then we did it, and we got a couple of awards for that one. So that was really nice. But most of my stuff, I want people to read Rook right now. That's the one. And it's hard because it's a new thing. So you're trying to sell people on a new idea. It's not Batman. It's not Superman. But I think people are going to dig it. Yeah. And they're going to dig the universe and the world. And people are going to latch on to certain characters because everybody's got a favorite animal.
Yep.
So people will like this character. We got some really cool characters coming up, and that we're going to introduce. So that would be something right now. I'm really trying to bang the drum. I want people to. I'm really proud of it.
Rightly so. I mean, you are a good storyteller, because I've heard you talk about it before, but I'm leaning in when you tell me what this book is going to be. It sounds really exciting. Got to read the not the preview, but what was the one that came out a couple weeks ago? Yeah. Just looks super exciting, man. I will be excited for more people to discover that. I think they're going to. So part of your day job sometimes involves going to comic conventions, which is it's its own culture. What is one of your most odd convention experiences that you've had?
Oh, I don't know if I've ever run into anything too odd. Sometimes you get people who they just want to explain to you their giant magnum opus Justice League or Batman story, and you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, but it's like, I can't use any of this stuff, I'm not, I've been, I haven't had too many odd things. I've had cool things happen where I've met, heroes of mine or artists that I really look up to, or I've got to go out to dinner with different artists and writers and really just learn from them and their experiences. And I've made some really great friends, other Christian artists like Lee Weeks and Pat Gleason, and really became, brothers with these guys.
Yeah, those are great artists.
Yeah, being able to talk with them about different things and meeting people from all over I hate using the word fans. I don't like that word, because I'm just I see myself as I'm just a comic book fan who loves comics, who just so happened to fall into working in this. I get just as excited when, I don't know, Jim Lee's going to draw Batman or something like that. I get excited about that, just like a comic book fan would. And so, but I like the connections with people and getting to talk with them at conventions and hear their stories, or they're something that touched them, or that kind of a thing. Nothing crazy really comes to mind. If there is anything, I've kind of put it out of my mind. I put it out of my head. I try to focus on the good things.
That's healthy. Right? That is very healthy. Yeah. No, it's so good, man. One thing that I've loved getting to know a little bit more about you today is just how Bible saturated you are. I mean, that's beautiful, man. I've loved how you've just shared those Bible stories and really, honestly, how biblically serious as a man that you are. If you ever got the chance to illustrate a book of the Bible, which one would you go with?
Yeah, I thought about that. I brought up the story of David because it's very wrong. And I can really relate to him. I relate to him in a lot of ways, and a lot of the Psalms and stuff like that. I would love, for me though, I would love to. I don't know how you do it, but Revelation is just packed with some visual.
Man, yeah.
I've tried to do stuff before. In fact, I've tried to do pieces, biblical pieces. And what's funny is every time I try it, I go, "This isn't how it would have looked. It's not it." And so I get discouraged. I've tried to draw images of even of Christ, and it's that's not how he would look. I don't know. It's hard to,
I bet it looked better than what most of us would try.
Yeah, maybe, but I'm such a perfectionist in that way. It's Revelation's cool because you could kind of do some very symbolic things too, so that you could really, push that. And then a lot of stuff from Genesis, like the whole Genesis 1 right up through Genesis 6 with Noah. And that would be great. And same with Moses. The cool thing is that there has been a lot of art based on that stuff. You have the Acton Bible. Which sells great. My son has that. He brings it to church, flips through it during church, and he's like, man, what's this story here? What about those dry bones? That's a cool story. What's that all about? Okay. And then I explain it to him. There's that. And there's some amazing illustrations from Gustave Doré. Everybody's seen these They're I don't know, probably a couple hundred years old, but they're all wood print prints or whatever, and he's got like some super epic like stuff, and it's like sometimes I sit there and think like it's the best stuff's probably already been done. What can I really bring to it? But I think what would be fun is taking some of those stories and just weaving them into more modern kind of tales, and but still working through it and working the main themes and morals throughout that story.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I even had an idea once of taking Psalms and illustrating them, because there's some really cool ones where it talks about, like being on the mountain and having a bow that's given to you, like it's like it just brings up this imagery, and the horn sounding and all this kind of stuff. So yeah.
No, a new friend of mine, his name's Stephen Procopio. That's what he does. And that's so, our YouTube viewers can see some of his work behind me. He actually illustrated the founding verse, Psalm 133 for Beta Upsilon Chi. So he took a crack at some kind of weird Psalms and made them work. But yeah, I was interested in your take on that, because, as a biblically informed man who also is a visual storyteller, was interested to see what you come up with. Man, so we've got guys listening, and they may be just interested. What are comics? Rook Exodus is definitely one of them that you would hand to a man to show him this is the possibilities of a comic book.
Yeah.
Or maybe what were the ones that opened your eyes? Maybe that's a two-tone question.
Yeah, because it's tough, because like one of the books that really blew me away and opened my eyes was like Watchmen, but Watchmen's pretty mature.
Yeah.
It's not something I would really give to somebody and be like, yeah, read this. This is, but really Watchmen is a incredibly drawn and well told story. It's just very dark and mature.
Yeah.
But one book I was thinking about actually was All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. And I remember reading that and just going like, wow, like this is a cool Superman story, because he really takes all these like goofy kind of stuff from like the 50s, like the lizard people living in the center of the earth, and he does a story with it that fits within the whole.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, and I really, it's a beautifully drawn book. There was that one. There's Batman Hush was one that really spoke to me when I was like kind of around that time, like really starting to wanting to pursue comics. Like that book blew my mind. Seeing Jim Lee draw Batman, I was just like, wow, like I can't, like I've never seen anything like this before.
Same.
It was just, it really got me. Blackest Night, Geoff Johns' Blackest Night was another one where I read that around that when I was in Bible college. And that was one that when I read that, it really, like, I was just like, wow, like this is, I wasn't really reading any DC, so I had no clue who half these characters were.
Yeah. Really,
but like Geoff, he loves to take these like C and D level characters and somehow make them the main character of the story. And then you fall in love with the Atom and Mira, the Aqua Woman. And like, I never thought I would want to read a story about these characters and like there was the Flashes in there and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, I really, really liked that story. And Ivan Race just draws the heck out of that.
Oh my goodness. And, yes.
So I don't know. Those are some like Long Halloween is one of those great Batman stories, but the art, Tim Sale's artwork is one of those. He's like it's a very different artist.
Yes. But it's very distinct.
Beautiful. He draws beautifully in his own way, but it's very different. But it works for that film noir crime kind of story.
Is that Tim's work behind you in black and white?
Yeah, that's
okay.
It's just a print, but it's like he signed it for me and everything. I got to meet him a couple of years back.
That's fun.
But I love Tim Sale, and it was sad to hear that he passed away because he was one of my favorite artists. And so I don't know. Like there's a lot of books. The cool thing with comics is there's books for everybody. You can find them out there. Now we're getting a lot of influx of like Japanese stuff too, so that kind of opens up a new world of characters. And like I've been reading through Akira, which is like probably the most famous manga book, and I've been really enjoying it. But like I'm just blown away by the artistry and the amount of detail that guy put into his work, it puts everybody to shame. Like I couldn't, like the amount of windows he's drawn on all these buildings, and it's all masterfully done. And it's like I can look at most comic books and I can find something there that I see as really good and something that I can marvel at and then want to use as inspiration for myself. And so I try to do that with everything I'm reading.
That's fun, man.
Yeah,
that's good. Those are some great recommendations. How can the fellows connect with you and your work? How can we get in on Ghost Machine's launch?
Yeah. So, we have an Instagram at Ghost Machine Pro. Ghostmachinepro.com has all of our social media stuff. Mine is, if you just look up Jason Fabok on Google, you'll find I'm most active on Instagram just because it's visual. It's a more visual thing, but I do have a Facebook.
I think that's most people.
Yeah, I have like a Facebook artist group. But you can follow me there. And follow our books. Our books launch April 3rd, and they're going to be going monthly. Geiger and Redcoat will be monthly. Rook, I want to draw the whole thing myself, the whole, however long it goes. Hopefully it goes for a long time. So we're going to do it's going to be kind of an arc. So there'll be 6 issues, and then there'll be a break, and then I'll come back with another 6 issues. Kind of like Mike Mignola did that with his Hellboy series. He would kind of come in for an arc, and then he'd be gone, and then come in with another 6-issue arc. Maybe then the next one might be 3 issues. Then it might be a one-shot. Then it might be 4 issues. So I want time to draw this and build this universe. I don't want to rush it. And I also have a young family, and I part of doing a lot of this stuff has been taking a step away from DC Marvel. Is I wanted a little more control over my work life as well. If I want to spend more time, the last couple of years I've been able to coach my son's hockey team, and I'm able to do different things with my kids and just be there on weekends instead of working every waking hour like I did.
Yeah.
First kind of going when I first was starting. So Ghost Machines allowed me that. I'm really thankful for it. But check out those things. We have a great Ghost Machine YouTube's got a whole bunch of cool video stuff and trailers, so you can see some of the art there. And
that's great. Your priorities are in the right place, man. Jason Fabok, thank you so much for joining us today on Man to Men.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared.
Man to Men is a creation of Beta Upsilon Chi, the nation's largest Christian fraternity. Commonly referred to as Bucks, we exist to equip and empower college men to live faithfully and lead courageously. You can find out more about Beta Upsilon Chi by transliterating our Greek letters and adding a .org. That's byx.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and consider giving to our work with college men across the United States by following the link in our show notes. We are produced, rather well I might add, by the good gentlemen of the Good Podcast Company. Producer Bradley is at the helm over there. Until next time, I'm Dr. Jared Musgrove with Man to Men.